I wanted to go a little bit in the weeds here with you because there's been some really interesting connections that I've been finding between the alignment with nature that the Stoics talked about and say Taoism and the way that they viewed looking at your place within the world. Because I think the Taoists basically said that you shouldn't force anything. You shouldn't try to not desire things. You shouldn't try to force yourself into a disciplinary state where you're trying to be something that you're simply not. But to not force anything, to understand that ultimately, even you cannot make the most rational decision, because rationality is the thing that believes itself, right? It's like, am I rational? Well, I would need rationality to be able to say that I'm rational. So am I
Right.
rational? So do you think that there was any part of the Stoic view here that said, stop trying so much to fit in because you already do fit in? You are absolutely a natural part of this. Was there any part of them, do you think that said, I'm struggling to get this out, that if you were just to let go of everything that you can't control for a little bit, then maybe you would find that you actually do have somewhat of an internal compass, just the same way that a lion would have an internal compass?
Yeah, right. Good. So, yeah, so my understanding of Taoism is following the Tao involves effort. So it's
Mm.
a kind of paradoxical notion that it does require effort, but it doesn't require, forcing, obsessive
Yeah.
imposition, trying to get a square peg in a round hole kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, if you're a Stoic and you believe in providence, fate, destiny, right reason, that the universe is well structured, orderly, put together, operates on its own without my contributions just fine, right? And has done so for a very long time, then this does invite you to have a great deal of confidence that the world will operate just fine whether or not I choose to participate in the symphony, right?
Mm.
That there's this kind of symphonic orchestration that governs everything that happens everywhere. And so it's not like everything will fall apart everywhere if I'm not keeping all of the balls that I'm juggling at the moment in the air. The universe is going to keep on ticking just fine and has done so for a very long time. In fact, Stoicism is so often a good corrective to arrogance, to think
Mm.
that everything's just going to completely fall apart if I don't have control, tight, iron fisted control over every little aspect of my tiny little slice of the world that I move around in and interact with. What foolishness is that, right? The universe has done
Mm.
just fine without me since I came on the scene. It will do just fine without me once I'm gone, right?
Yeah.
And so that perspective provides both a confidence that things are going to go okay, big picture, just fine, regardless of what I do, right? But that doesn't exonerate me from what I am responsible for, which is the things which are directly, completely up to me, right?
Yeah.
How I handle myself, what I do, what I say, what I fail to do, what I fail to say, right? When I fail to stand up for justice, when I fail to do my part to protect the weak and vulnerable, that's
Mm.
entirely on me. No excuses there. That's my failure. That's my wickedness. And I'm going to be miserable as a consequence of that, right?
Mm.
But at the same time, since there's so much that's not up to me, it's the recognition that that's okay.
Mm.
It's okay that the weather is not up to me.
Yeah.
I don't decide when it rains or snows, when it gets hot or dry or whatever, right? Thank goodness that's not up to me. I don't have the power or the wisdom to control that sort of stuff, right? And it's the same with other people, right? And this is why in my profession, it's just vital to constantly remind myself, try to remind myself that teaching is entirely a two-way street, right? You can put ideas out there, you can ask questions, you can respond to questions that students ask you, but you can't make anyone learn anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't force knowledge that you've acquired over years of study and experience and listening to other people and reading things and thinking about them. You can't force that down anyone's throat. It just doesn't work that way. So fundamentally, education is just always, always a journey of self-discovery. And so if you remember that and you think about your own learning and what other teachers provided you, then what you do is you try to model their techniques that you thought worked really well, and then you try to pass that on to your students. But you put it out there, whether they take it or not, how they internalize it, how they interpret it, that's entirely up to them. And you have to be
Mm.
okay with it. You have to be okay with that. It's the same thing with the universe itself. The universe gives us opportunities to learn stuff. And if we can figure it out for ourselves and incorporate it into our lives and improve ourselves in consequence of that, that's great. But we're going to make mistakes. And we need to
Mm.
know that about ourselves too, right? Because we're fallible. We have finite resources. You know, you can read a book that you love and want to read the whole thing in one sitting, but when you get to be my age, you can't do all-nighters anymore. You just can't. You got to sleep.
Yeah.
So you need to be aware of your own limitations, always your own limitations as a human being. And this gets back to the living agreement with nature stuff again, right? Because living agreement with nature for me, given my age and my physical limitations and abilities, is going to be different in subtle ways and maybe not so subtle
Mm.
ways from what living agreement with you as a young fellow with lots of energy, right? And lots of abilities that I don't have anymore, right? Or maybe never did, depending
Mm.
on, our talents and skills. So living in agreement with nature means, okay, you have to accept that about your own skill set. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And live in agreement with your self-knowledge of those limitations.
Mm.